Now, talk to Iranian exiles in touch with friends and family back home, and they'll tell you that opposition to the Tehran regime has continued day by day, despite often brutal efforts of the Iranian government to suppress it. Today, hundreds of thousands of people gathered in Tehran to mark the 31st anniversary of the Iranian Revolution, along with a new crackdown on the opposition and attempts to disrupt internet access. Peter Marshall reports.
The anniversary of the revolution, the day when the Iranian people assert their sovereignty. Hundreds of thousands came onto the streets of Tehran to support the government. Many may have been bussed in, but their ardour couldn't be denied. For President Ahmadinejad, this will have been viewed as a huge success. The opposition Green movement had been banking on showing their growing numbers. In the end, they appeared swamped, their efforts disparate and scattered around Tehran. One activist who's followed events online says this follows weeks of intimidation.
Basically, we didn't have visibility. We didn't manage to get to that point that we recognize each other as other Green protesters and then bring out the Green signs or symbols.
What went wrong?
I think the government had put all its energy in the last month to make sure goes successful through this moment. They have arrested about hundreds of people, hundreds of journalists, bloggers, people who were writing about cultural or philosophical matters.
In advance of the demonstration?
In the last 3 weeks, and especially in the last week.
The opposition say where they did appear in numbers, they were attacked by security forces. One of the Green movement leaders, Mehdi Karoubi, is said to have been beaten up. Tonight we spoke to one of his sons.
They used tear gas against him directly in his face and also tried to beat him. And some of his people received a very bad injury, and one of his bodyguards is now in the hospital.
He says his brother, Ali Karoubi, was taken away by the police.
At the moment, we don't know anything about my brother. Nobody tell us anything. Police arrested him, and when we try to ask where is he, at the moment they tell us we don't know, we will inform you later.
President Ahmadinejad chose today to announce a breakthrough in Iran's nuclear program. He said they've produced their first stock of 20% enriched uranium and could get close to weapons grade, but choose not to.
The whole thing is
Dr. Alahe Mokhtashem has been to the nuclear plants as a government guest. She says the West would be wise to listen.
It's a reminder to the West that if it doesn't cooperate with Iran, if it doesn't pick up Iran's offer of help, assistance to get these fuel for the research reactor, Iran is going ahead and do it itself, as it has proved before in previous years.
So he's putting the squeeze on the West in a way. He's saying it's up to you now.
Absolutely.
For the Iranian opposition, the future looks uncertain. For them, today was at best an anticlimax, a defeat in a battle they'd hoped would be a turning point.
But unfortunately, the government attacked against the people who tried to participate in this rally.
So you're saying it was the government violence that suppressed the demonstrators?
Exactly.
That showed that we have to pay even higher price from now on. I think the government is going to be drunken by not this victory, by the fact that they have managed to extract some good shots out of it and show it to the world and show it to their own people.
They've won the propaganda battle today.
They did. I think they did manage to win it for the first time.
Well, I'm joined now from New York by Richard Haass, former Director of Policy Planning at the US State Department. Mr. Haass, this is obviously a very difficult and very long-running problem, but how would you recommend the Obama administration deals with Iran now?
Well, the Obama administration has put most of its eggs, so to speak, in the hopes of negotiating an agreement with the Iranian government. We can continue to try that, but quite honestly, there's very little evidence, if any, to suggest it will work. Instead, I would continue to try to get greater international pressure on Iran through sanctions, preferably through the UN Security Council, but if need be, the US and the EU could act outside the Security Council. We need to provide rhetorical support to the Iranian opposition, not simply on behalf of their political rights, but also to point out that Iran as a country pays an enormous price for the foreign policies of this regime, and also help the opposition with such things as maintaining access to the internet. One of the reasons today played out the way it did is the government was fairly effective at denying access to the opposition to the internet. And in the future, it's important that the Green Movement enjoys much broader access there.
To take a couple of different points there, first of all, rhetorical support for the opposition in Iran, isn't that likely to backfire given that you know how patriotic most Iranians are and the evil foreigners trying to stir things up in our countries is something you hear a lot from Iranians within the country?
Well, there's nothing unpatriotic about calling for the rights and freedoms of the Iranian people and for the government to respect their own laws. So I don't see anything wrong with that. The government's going to try to portray the opposition as somehow the pawns of foreigners, whether the United States or Europe does anything or not. Also, the opposition has asked for international support. They want the world to pay attention to what is going on in Iran. And it seems to me, as a matter of principle and policy alike, the United States and the Europeans ought to make clear that they are watching and that the Iranian government will pay something of a price if it continues to suppress its own people.
This uranium announcement, about 20% enriched uranium, I mean, given the technical sophistication of Iran, given the intelligence of their scientists, and given the fact they've got quite a lot of money, there's nothing really to stop them building a bomb if they want one, is there?
In the long run, they would get there if they were determined to do so. I don't put an awful lot of stock in this 20% announcement. It may or may not be true. Indeed, the largest story of late has been the problems the Iranians are encountering. There's all sorts of evidence that many of their centrifuges are not spinning and that the Iranians are having tremendous difficulty producing high-quality uranium in anything like the quantity they want. But that said, I don't fight your basic point, where if the Iranians are determined to produce weapons-grade material for a nuclear weapon, and if the world permits them, that it's a question of when and not if they would reach that point.
Richard Haass, thank you very much for joining us from New York.